Before we begin, I'd like to outline today's briefing. Sheriff Hutson will provide an update on the Miranda's rescue investigation. After his remarks, we will open it up to questions. Please hold all questions and commentary until the end of the briefing. Please refrain from any excessive flashes. And we have an ASL interpreter present today. If you need any information in another language, please see us after the briefing. I will now turn it over to Sheriff Hutson.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. Thank you all for being here today. Let me go ahead and move this down here. Great. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Thank you. My name is William Hutson, Sheriff here in Humboldt County. Today I want to provide information regarding our ongoing criminal investigation at Miranda's Rescue Animal Sanctuary located in Fortuna, California. I want to begin by acknowledging the seriousness of this case and the significant public concerns it has generated. The facts that have been uncovered are deeply disturbing, and I understand the community's desire for answers, accountability, and justice. First, I want to acknowledge how we got here. On April 22nd, 2026, two concerned citizens reported allegations of felony animal abuse and potential fraud involving Miranda's Rescue. Those citizens have been monitoring activity at Miranda's Rescue and observed what they believe to be dogs being buried in an open field behind the rescue. Those citizens later entered the property, recovered 8 deceased dogs from the burial site. Those animals were turned over to the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office and a criminal investigation was launched. Miranda's Rescue advertises itself as an animal sanctuary and entered into agreements with animal shelters and rescue organizations to provide a place where animals could either be adopted out or live out their lives in the sanctuary. The allegations in this case, Miranda's Rescue received money for animal placements, but later euthanized and were not adopted out or allowed to live out their lives in their sanctuary as represented. A search warrant was authorized and served at Miranda's Rescue on May 1st, 2026. During that operation, investigators seized electronics, business records, financial records, firearms, and other vital evidence. Since that time, investigators have reviewed records, analyzed evidence, and contacted animal shelters and rescue organizations throughout California and even outside the state. Based on records reviewed by our team from January 25 until April 26, investigators have identified the following preliminary numbers. When I say preliminary numbers, these are the numbers that we know about. We do know that more animals were transferred to that facility than we have documentation for. Out of what we know, 918 dogs were surrendered and were transferred to Miranda's Rescue. 116 have been adopted out through adoption records we can verify. 71 dogs were discovered available for adoption on May 20th. There are still 45 dogs remaining at Miranda's Rescue still today. And that leaves 731 dogs unaccounted for. After several weeks of preparing and assembling a team of investigators, June 23rd, 2026, the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office Major Crimes Division completed a second search warrant operation and follow-up investigation at Miranda's Rescue. That search warrant authorized the Sheriff's Office to search the grounds buildings associated with Miranda's Rescue for evidence related to animal cruelty and fraud. This included the excavation of open fields for evidence for deceased dogs believed to be buried in mass graves. During the excavation, investigators uncovered 117 intact canine remains from 2 separate dig sites. I'm going to go ahead and review. This is what we have as far as Miranda's Rescue and overhead satellite view. Miranda's Rescue is in our lower left corner. The rescue operations with the kennels. We have the ranch on the north end of things, and the open field is this area right here. The dogs, this open field was, this is how it looked when we arrived on scene. When we arrived on scene, we scraped off the property to use our ground penetrating radar to report any anomalies in the soil. We used that information to know where to potential dig. We had a grid pattern to demonstrate the anomalies in the soil and to determine where possibly could be dig sites. We then started our excavation on the 23rd. This is where we located the bulk of the intact canines. There were 2 holes, distinct holes, one here, signifying by the blue tarp. We'll go back. By this blue tarp right here. The other one was right here. We excavated 117 dogs out of those 2 holes. The deepest was about 12 to 15 feet deep. The dogs were layered. You can tell that there was different times that the various dogs were put in. And according to our timeline through evidence, it was determined that the dogs were buried here sometime after January, between January and April 2026. 70 of the dogs were x-rayed on site, and many of those dogs showed evidence of bullet fragments. Shows how deep we were going. 70 of those dogs were x-rayed on site, and many of those dogs showed evidence of bullet fragments. Veterinarians on site preliminary determined that many of the dogs died from gunshot wounds. In total, 91 microchips were recovered from the scene. 6 were recovered from the loose dirt area where the bones were discovered. That's where the 29 canine skulls and hundreds of dog bones were discovered. The 6 loose microchips were also discovered in there. And 85 of the microchips were scanned from those 117 intact dogs. Many of those microchips trace back to shelters and rescue facilities throughout the state. I have our analysts currently working and reviewing that data obtained by those microchips, and we're working to link up our investigators with those previous owners of those dogs. 8 animals originally turned over to the sheriff's office by the 2 concerned citizens are currently being held in storage, and necropsies will be performed on these animals in the future. This case has many moving parts, as you all know. Investigators will be spending a significant amount of time working with our state and federal partners to analyze the data, physical evidence, and financial information associated with this case. This includes interviewing witnesses and following up on tips. This process will take time. Upon completion of the investigation and after a thorough review of all evidence, if there is sufficient evidence to support violations of animal cruelty, fraud, conspiracy, or other applicable laws, the case will be submitted to the prosecution team for review and consideration of criminal charges. I understand the public's cry for justice. I understand the public's cry for transparency. However, we must balance the public's right to know with the constitutional and legal rights of everyone involved. This case will not be solved in the public forum. It will be handled through the criminal justice system and, if appropriate, a court of law. I'm asking everyone to take a breath in this time. Allow the investigation and legal process to work. We owe that to the victims, the community, and to the integrity of this case. Also want to say that the Sheriff's Office has received hundreds and hundreds of tips in this case. We're following up on those tips, and we continue to do so every day, receive more tips. At this time, there are many rumors circulating in our community about additional locations we should search, possible suspects, and other claims. We ask that the public please provide information directly to investigators and avoid spreading unverified information that could compromise the investigation. Many people have asked why Miranda's Rescue has been allowed to continue operating under these allegations. This remains an active criminal investigation, it's true, but it's important to understand that there's no current law or specific state permit or license required to operate an animal rescue in California. So they're allowed to continue operating in this time. I do want to say that I do believe that there's several things that need to be changed throughout the state. There needs to be legislation, and I want to say that there was legislation this last year. AB 631 was proposed that would require shelters and rescues like Miranda's Rescue to collect and report important information, including the number of animals taken in, the source of intake, and the outcome for each animal. That would require them to say if the animal was returned to owner, adopted, transferred to another facility, organization, euthanized, died in care, or dead on arrival. This type of accountability and transparency is necessary. That bill would be held in committee, and I believe that needs to be pushed forward this next legislative season. Like I said before, California has a serious spay and neuter problem, and something needs to be done about it. Animal shelters across the state are overwhelmed. Rescues are beyond capacity, and too many healthy adoptable animals are being put at risk because the system cannot keep up. This is not just a shelter issue, it is a community responsibility. We need stronger public education, greater access to affordable spay and neuter services, responsible pet ownership, and renewed statewide commitment to reduce the number of unwanted animals. If we are serious about animal welfare, we must address this problem at its source. Now, we are continuing to ask for the public's help. We cannot do it without you. If anyone has information about this case, please contact us. We're also asking for anyone who has information about an animal transferred to Miranda's rescue within the past year, please email us. Here's our email on the screen or the tip line. When contacting us, please provide information, as much information as possible, include the dog's description. If you have the microchip number, caller information or description, date of transfer, shelter or rescue agency involved, any records or photos you might have, please email those to us. It's very, very important that we have as much information as possible. The Sheriff's Office did not do this alone. We have great partners. We have great partners and a great partnership that we have entered in with in this criminal investigation. I want to thank our Major Crimes Division. They did an outstanding job with this from the onset. Our Animal Control Team, Humboldt County District Attorney's Office, the State Attorney General's Office, the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the FBI, Yurok Tribe, Cal Poly, Humboldt Anthropology Departments, the Animal Legal Defense Fund, and our private forensic veterinarians who came and assisted us in this operation. I do want to say that our animal control officers are going to Miranda's rescue 3 days a week, checking on the animals, verifying that they are being taken care of. And Shannon has been totally cooperative with that, reviewing data and tracking those animals. There is plenty of food for those animals, and they are properly being cared for. At this time, I just want to say that this is still an active case and it's still ongoing. I'm available to take any questions that you may have right now.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, you mentioned dogs, that there are still dogs on site. What about, I know he's taken in many other species of animals. Can you tell us whether any of those remain and what's being done to ensure their well-being?
There are birds, there are also cats that are part of the shelter there. We have checked on those, we're checking on those as well. We have checked on the birds. Shannon has allowed us to go look at his private animals as well. And all the animals seem to be healthy at this time. And again, he's voluntarily working with our animal control staff. And so we are definitely checking the welfare of those animals 3 times a week.
A couple of questions. One is, I know this was kind of a huge operation, multiple agencies involved, and I'm just wondering if there's any kind of historical precedent for this. Like, are the agencies you're working with, have they seen this kind of thing before? Or is this kind of like you're building a roadmap for this investigation as you're engaging in it?
I don't think this is a total foreign investigation. I think there has been things like that. This has happened in the past. We have not experienced that here on the North Coast. From the very beginning of this investigation, we knew this was going to be a very complex investigation, not only because this involves our county, but this involves multiple counties throughout the state. When we first discussed this investigation, I reached out to Chief Woolery at the Department of Justice and asked for his assistance because of the multi-jurisdictional aspect of it. So the Attorney General's office is involved, the Department of Justice is involved, and is able to assist us, with this investigation. And so we're thankful for that. We do have a great team up here, but in this case, where it involves, again, 20 or so counties, 20 or so different shelters and different organizations, we're going to need that assistance.
And is there any update on the kind of charity aspect of this? Like, have there been violations of the nonprofit status by Shannon Miranda? Like, what is that aspect of the kind of more paperwork side of the investigation?
So this is still an active fraud investigation as well. We're looking at all aspects of this case to determine what applicable laws could have been broken. It is going to be up to our investigation team to review all those different records, and then at the conclusion of the investigation, present that evidence to our prosecution team to see if there's any violations of the law.
What's being done with the carcasses that were recovered last week? And are necropsies going to be performed on any of them to determine how they died?
Yes, so we are currently holding them as evidence, and the 8 previously taken, we have necropsies, going to be scheduled for those. As we performed 70 field necropsies, essentially, doing preliminary cause of death. We're working with our veterinary team to see what we can do with the dogs that we did not review. I think there's 47 dogs that we did not perform this test on. They're currently being held in evidence, cold storage, and so we are looking at what our possibilities are of performing those autopsies to determine the evidentiary value. We'll be working with our prosecution team to determine what should be processed and how it should be processed and what evidence we need to keep moving forward. There's a question here.
Hi. Is Shannon Miranda required to check in with the sheriff's office? Are his movements restricted in any way at this time?
Not at all. He is a free citizen, free to move, and he's voluntarily checking in with our people 3 days a week. And while we are there on site,
So when you're
animals.
checking
Yes.
the animals?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You also mentioned at the beginning, and I think Kevin basically reported out 2 very concerned citizens that brought evidence to the sheriff's office, which prompted the investigation. Is there any concern that because that evidence was collected while they had gone on to someone else's property without permission, that somehow that could impact the case?
I think there's been case law established, but that's going to be up to the prosecution team. We're going to write up our investigation, include all the facts of the case, and then present it to the prosecution team, and they will determine what is evidence and what is not evidence and how to move forward with that. In the back.
Yeah. Is the scope of the investigation expanding based on what's been found, or is it still focused on the original allegations?
I think the original allegations still are the primary driving point. Potential animal cruelty and fraud is what's driving this investigation at this point in time.
And so I saw that there was the the crushings
Yes.
mentioned at the last press conference. Can you elaborate on that and tell us exactly how that possibly ties into this investigation?
Sure. Well, as we know, there's state laws and there's federal laws, and our federal partners are active in this case, and they're looking at the Animal Welfare Act, the Crush Act, PACT Act, and looking at those potential laws and to see whether or not there is a violation of those laws. The federal investigators are running their investigation independently because, again, we're looking at state law, working with the Attorney General and Department of Justice. But the feds, they have a different aspect. They have a different outlook, and that's what they're looking at right now. Yes.
You stated that you dug in 2 spots on that area. Are you planning on digging in other locations, or are you done?
So we spent 3 days looking there, and as we go back, let's see here. So on this parcel, so what we did is we excavated in various locations of this parcel, and we dug basic potholes, essentially looking for when there was anomalies in the soil. We dug in those areas, and there was a couple different spots where we found bones in different areas of this property. Other spots where we found more mass grave, but the animals were in advanced stages of decomposition. And at that point in time, it didn't serve any evidentiary value to remove those animals from that location because essentially we couldn't make a determination at that point in time, based upon the severe decomposition of those animals. That location was on I guess it would be the north end of the property in this little area right here. So at this point in time, we don't have any we don't have any plans to returning to the property, but that could change if evidence, if there's something that, comes forward, we could ask the judge for another search warrant and go out there to excavate. Again, we were there again for 3 days. We had experts there for 3 days performing a lot of intense work. Like I said, this was a pretty horrific situation, and our people and everyone involved did some tremendous work working around these conditions. Yes, ma'am.
So, given that it's known that there are more dogs that are buried in the yard, is there any idea of the scope of that, or how many dogs might be buried? I know they're in various stages of decomposition.
Right.
Do
So
they are-
we'd only be guessing at that point in time. Like I said, the 2 spots that we found, evidence points that these dogs were buried between, January and April of this year. So I understand that there are 700 missing unaccounted for dogs. We were able to locate 117 of them, plus the 8 that were originally found. But, you can come to your own conclusion as far as what happened to them.
You say 117, but you also indicated there were 21 skulls, so wouldn't that put it at 138 at least?
Sure, yeah, definitely, thank you.
And just given the kind of level of decomposition and the bodies that were recovered, would it make sense in the normal running of a rescue where you have to euthanize animals because they are sick, because they have other issues going on? Like, would this be the amount that you would kind of normally see in the course of doing business, or does this seem kind of outside of that scope?
It seems outside of the scope. We have an animal rescue, we have a shelter that we run here in Humboldt County. And euthanasia is a part of our rescue. It is a part of our animal shelter. And we do have animals that are unadoptable, that are aggressive, and that have to be put down, are sick, ill, hurt, injured. And so that is a part of it. But it's usually 1 to 2, right, that have to be put down. What we're looking at is 10, 15. That's the evidence that's supported by what we found on scene. That is what we're looking at as far as at a time buried in these different locations.
And in terms of the microchip process of identifying the animals and then potentially connecting them with people, community members who have said that they surrendered dogs there, like, is that part of the process you're currently involved in, or will you kind of hold off on that until the investigation is further along?
So that is going to be the next stage in the investigation, is we're going to try and link up the microchip data with the previous owners, with our investigators. So over the next week or 2, people that do have animals that were transferred to Miranda's rescue in the past year could be receiving a phone call from us. And so at that point in time, we'll be asking some specific questions surrounding that adoption, and then we'll go from there.
I think also last week, Sacramento Animal Control or Animal Services was on site to try and recover 2 dogs that had kind of been unlawfully transferred to Miranda's rescue. And they were not allowed to see those dogs and were not allowed to return with them. Do you know anything about the status of those dogs, if they're still alive or if they're at the shelter or anything?
So the dogs, we have not, the dogs that are there, I think are still there. And I'm not sure as far as what's legal precedent they have about returning those dogs. So that's gonna be up to Sacramento and Shannon. Shannon can have a right to refuse anyone on this property. And unless they have a search warrant or a court order, the dogs don't have to be returned.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could speak any more to the barn kill zone and what that
Sure.
looked like. Where did you find the 600 collars? Were they all together? Were there name tags? Why do you think you might have kept them?
So I'm not gonna speculate as far as why I think he kept them, but this is the barn facility where the collars were located. This is the barn where he supposedly has quarantined the animals that were coming onto his rescue. And this is also the area where we have evidence to show that the euthanasia occurred. We found spent shell casings, we found 22 rounds, as well as the 22 rifle was also located there, as well as blood spatter, and the collars were located at that location.
Do they have names or any identifying information?
They do. There's several that have dog tags on them, license numbers on them, names. There are some distinct markings and some unique qualities to some of the dog collars. That's why we're asking the public that if they did transfer a dog within the last year and they have some specific information about the chip number or collar and the description of the collar, that they include that. Our investigators will document those and try to link up those. The ones that are easy to have a dog license on them, we will be able to track those down and track down the previous owner. But there also were, there's 661 actual dog collars that were located at that location.
Has Shannon Miranda said anything about why so many dogs were found, or has he said anything since the date started that you're able to share?
No, not this time.
Could the investigation lead to looking into whether the shelter that sent dogs to the rescue knew about alleged activity happening there?
Your question was there information about our animal shelter?
No. So could the investigation lead to looking into whether the shelters that sent the dogs to the rescue knew about the alleged activity happening there?
That's going to be a part of our investigation. We want to know what the expectation was for the people sending the dogs to Miranda's rescue. That's going to be very important for us to know what the expectation was, what the MOUs, what the contracts state. Many of these larger agencies do have contracts that say some specific things about how the animal should be cared for. And so we will be looking at that, but there's also going to be agreements, handshakes. There's going to be emails, conversations that people had that are pertinent to this case. Yes.
Yes, related to the dog collars, did any of those, are you aware, correspond to any microchips that have been recovered? And can you give us an updated total on the microchip number?
Yes, so that's part of what we're doing is we're linking up the known information. Right now, we're logging all the caller information that we do have, trying to identify that. As we know, there are some that do have names on them. There are some that have license numbers on them, so we got to track that information down. So we're going to track the information, log it, and then see if we can't link it up with a known microchip, and then again, the previous owner. There were 91 microchips discovered. 6 of those were found in the dirt, so that leaves 85 were associated with the dogs.
Sheriff, previously Shannon Miranda indicated that he intended to press charges, trespassing charges on the 2 women who allegedly trespassed on his property. Has he made any motion to do so thus far?
I do not believe so.
You
Yes.
spoke a little bit to kind of the systemic issues that are like bigger than this one case, the overpopulation, the need for legislation. What about, like, is there any state body whose job it is to do this? Because when I was looking into it, I was like, it's your job, right? It's the sheriff's job, it's local kind of municipalities, and there's really a patchwork. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to potentially the need for, someone whose job it is to solely do this rather than it being a side gig.
Well, state laws are in place, right? Animal cruelty is in place, but the laws regarding animal cruelty are pretty specific of what we can't have to prove in court. Whether or not these deaths were malicious in nature. So all those things are very, very pertinent to a criminal investigation. But the state has to step up. The state has to regulate when they find that there's something that is unregulated that needs to be. This is a perfect opportunity. We also can do that locally through an ordinance and regulate the amount of rescues or how many animals a rescue could take. There's a lot of buzz around what should be done at this given time, with rescues in general. I think a light is being shed on that, and it should be at this point in time because, there needs to be accountability, right, in this situation, and so we need to make sure that we do change some things that need to be changed. Yes.
Can you speak to the complexity of charging someone for killing dogs? So like, is it legal to shoot a dog between the eyes that you're trying to use an eye from? What's-
Yeah, I mean, this is a case that's, has brought a lot of shock to some people, because if people say, you shouldn't be allowed to shoot a dog, and the state law says you can shoot a dog, right? And you just can't do it in a malicious manner. That's what the law says. And so, generally malicious, means in the law that we have to prove is that they intentionally did the wrongful act or acted within unlawful intent to disturb, defraud, annoy, or injure someone else, okay? That's malicious when it comes to the law in 597 animal cruelty here in California. So we have to prove whether or not someone tortured, wounded, or killed a living animal and the defendant acted maliciously and intentionally. So those are the rules. So those are the things that we have to prove animal cruelty charges. So shooting an animal in and of itself is not animal cruelty. Yes.
Are you able to identify the age ranges of the dogs that were recovered?
Not at this time. There were all shapes and sizes. So there were really small dogs and there were some large dogs that were recovered.
But not like the actual ages based on their dental records and dental?
I have not reviewed the necropsies and the reports that were generated. I'm sure that there are veterinarians, forensic veterinarians, that did an outstanding job in documenting those things. And so, it's one of the things that we can review and will be presented in court, I'm sure. Yes, in the back.
Building off of that question, were there puppies? As the original 8, there were some puppies in that hole. Were there puppies found this time as well?
I do not know.
I think a lot of people have questions about kind of how long this was going on. And I wonder about, I understand the decision to not kind of keep digging at the site without being able to recover evidence. But I guess I just want to know, do you think you'll be able to answer that question at the end of this investigation of how long, this alleged activity has been taking place?
If this does, prove to be criminal, I think that's one of the questions that we're going to have to answer. And I think that's one of the things that they're going to want to know. And so we're going to do our best to go over the records that we have access to and then hopefully come to that conclusion, at the end of the investigation. Yes?
So critics of Shannon Miranda have said for years that they've sent complaints to the sheriff, but nothing was done. Can you explain why it took so long to pursue a criminal investigation?
Sure. There could be allegations about someone, being made, but without concrete evidence, we cannot act on those things. It's one of the things that I mentioned from the very beginning, is that there's a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation, and so when people provide that information to the sheriff's office, we have to ask, what evidence do you have that proves that allegation? And so that's what we have to act on. We have to act on evidence. We have to act on firsthand knowledge, something witnessed. And so we are moving through a lot of the previous complaints that have been made to assure that there weren't things that we missed, things that hadn't been previously investigated, or maybe there's an allegation that they didn't have evidence to prove at the time. That may be very relevant here today. And so we are contacting those previous people and seeing what they know and seeing how it links up with our current investigation. Sir?
Have any of the recovered dogs been identified as animals that were previously recorded as adopted?
We are moving through that, and so I'm not able to publicly say at this time.
Can you give us any sense of a timeline? Obviously, you're saying it's complicated, it's going to take time. Do you have any sense of how long?
I don't. I'm asking for the public's, patience in this. It is something that we're moving through a lot of different information, and again, it's a very complex case, and so we're doing our best to go through all that evidence, and so if there is a time when we have enough evidence to present to a prosecution team, they're the ones that are going to make that determination to move forward criminally. Yes.
A couple financial questions. So On Miranda's IRS Form 990, the filings show that the board treasurer, Brian Paris, was responsible for reviewing the organization's financial reports. We're wondering if Brian Paris has been interviewed as part of the investigation to date, or if not, is that a plan? And then additionally, Shannon Miranda has said that he's not very good at paperwork. Do investigators believe that the financial records are accurate, that they reflect, comprehensive bookkeeping, or what would you say about that?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on who we're going to interview and who we have interviewed related to this criminal case. And then also, as far as the financial records go, all financial records are in play in this investigation, and we will be reviewing all of those. And if they are complete or not, our forensic team will be reviewing those. And so I'm not going to speculate on what is in them or not in them, or how complete that they are.
Okay.
Any further questions? Yes.
I believe at the press conference last week, you mentioned, you've been talking with the shelters, and those are, who transferred, who thought that they were giving over animals to be cared for, adopted out, forced to live out their life, and that they were the victims, so to speak, in the case, along with the animals, but the victims legally. So they have indicated to your office that they are interested in prosecuting this case? Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, they are. So
That would be like
they're
the majority
cooperating.
of the ones you've been working with?
Yes,
or-
they're cooperating with our investigation, and the majority of them do want to seek criminal complaint.
Would individuals who pay to drop off a dog also have that same standing?
Yes. Yes. So if the public had an expectation that, a belief that Miranda's Rescue was going to take and adopt out their animal, or there was some kind of agreement regarding pay for that animal, then they can contact us, and they can file a report with us, and we will take their statement. Yes.
There have been questions raised as well about whether, like, with all of this scrutiny, with people no longer wanting to contract with Miranda's Rescue, that they won't have the funds to take care of the animals that are currently there. Is that a concern?
You know what? If there comes a time when Shannon wants to give up those dogs that he currently is caring for, we have a plan to take those dogs. We have a plan to rehome those dogs. So that is in place, and so that is not something that he needs to be concerned about. And so, if they can no longer feed or care for him, at this point in time, he can. He is properly caring for those dogs. There was a rumor last week that they ran out of food. That is not the case. Again, our inspections have determined that they have plenty of food for those animals. They are being cared for. So.
Do you know where the court case might take place?
Where? I do not.
And then, do you know, can you explain at this point what the rescue's record keeping was like? Did you find any adoption for paperwork?
We found some adoption paperwork. We did seize some paperwork that was there. Initially, we were looking at current paperwork, 2025, 26. We went and got historical paperwork in this last search warrant, and some other financial paperwork. All right, no more questions. Then I appreciate everyone being here today. And so more information will be presented through press release or uploaded through our website. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.